Last Sunday's gospel ended with a warning from Jesus. He said, you cannot serve both God and mammon. And this Sunday, we read about a man who thought that he could do just that he could serve God and wealth and money. Now, no rational person would ever choose hell. But the rich man in this parable, he certainly didn't desire hell because he's not happy about being there, but his actions landed him there. And St. Luke told us in last Sunday's reading that Jesus had some bracing words to say about money to the Pharisees who gathered to hear him. But it says, and he also said they were lovers of money and they scoffed at him. And perhaps because of their hardness of heart, Jesus is telling another story about money for the opportunity that they would hear truth and repent. And that is what today's gospel message is all about. So like the rich man, most people do want wealth in this world. In fact, many people would think it irrational to not desire to be rich. I would say most. It is rare to find a person who chooses to live in simplicity as a means to deeper spiritual fulfillment and as a preparation for the riches of heaven. But one clear message from our gospel story today is that the life that Lazarus lived on earth was far better than that of the rich man. So, which life do you prefer here and now? The life like Lazarus or the life like the rich man? And I know what everybody's thinking. Well, I wouldn't do that. I would be a rich man who was kind, and I would be a rich man who gave his money to help people. Please, Lord, give me the money and then I'll help the people. But the truth is, it doesn't work like that. I know this from personal experience in my own life. I know this from many wealthy friends I have. It is rare that a wealthy man stays truly devoted to the Lord and follows his commands. It's rare. Well, it's true that the rich man's riches were not the exclusive cause of his eternal damnation. It's also true that his riches imposed upon him a temptation towards selfishness, indifference, and lack of help towards other people, a neglect of people. That's what ended him up in his eternal demise in hell. So imagine that you won millions of dollars. We just had the big, whatever it was, Powerball or whatever, hit half a billion. Was it $500 million, I think? And people run out and they buy their tickets. But a good question is, what would you do with it? As a good Christian, you might immediately profess that you'd use the money for good, to help people, make a difference in the life of people in the world. And the ideal response many people would have is, well, I'm going to give 10% to the church and I'll be good. But that's really not how it works. If you win $100 million and you give 10 million to the church and hang on to 90, God's still going to look at you like, well, what are you doing with the 90? What have you done for me, for my kingdom, for my people? So we have to be careful. Most people would not. The minute they won, they'd hire an attorney and an accountant and start planning what they're going to do with the money. That's what happens, And one thing that this parable teaches us is that material wealth not only adds nothing of value to your eternal reward, it also adds much temptation to your life. True, if you received a lot of money and then used that money exclusively for the good of others and expanding God's kingdom, that would be a very holy act of charity and that would advance your place in heaven. But doing so would be tremendously difficult. It would be very, very difficult to resist the temptations that come from excessive wealth because it's just built in. It's baked right in there with the money. Even small amounts of money motivate people to do things they normally wouldn't do. So if I posted in this week's bulletin, I'm going to let her get that out. See, that's the proper response to the message of today. No, Lord. But if I put in this week's bulletin that next Sunday, everybody who shows up at church, I'm going to hand you a $100 bill. Oh my. People would be planning to get up an hour early. Every kid in that household is coming to Mass today, no sleeping in. We're going to drag our nephews, our nieces. We're going to get grandma out of the nursing home. Everybody's coming today. You're going to call your friends. You're going to call people in Hendersonville. Come down to St. Catherine's. He's giving out $100 bills. And if I said you had to show up before the entry procession, people would be sitting here before the early morning mass waiting. There'd be nobody showing up late. But the reality is the Eucharist is so much more than $100. I mean, it's almost inappropriate to even compare the two. And yet we don't call anybody and say, hey, you coming to church? Jesus is waiting for you today. Come and make an encounter with him. That's what we should be doing. So the question is it good to be rich? It's certainly good to be taking care of your family, providing housing and shelter and food. That's all good stuff, and you need money to do it. But once our basic needs are met, the money left over is far more of a temptation than it is a blessing. And we have to know that. And if you don't know that, you have to really consider that, ponder it. And if you're among those who want to become rich so that you can help others, consider this scenario. If that's your motivation and you want a large amount of money, would you stay in the house you're in? Would you drive the car you're driving today? Would you keep your job? Or if you'd start changing everything and, leveling up to the next level, that's not good. Unless you're living in poverty, which I don't think, I'm sure, hopefully none of us are. But it's a rare man that will keep that life, even when he inherits the money. It's hard to do, but if you could do it, not only would it be good for you, it'd be good for others. And be exceptionally good for your soul, to witness to the Lord that the money isn't affecting your life. And though this gospel story has many valuable lessons in it, one of the clearest messages is that earthly poverty benefits a soul far more than earthly wealth. Earthly poverty benefits the soul far more than earthly wealth. And many people find that hard to swallow because we don't want to be poor. And I'm not saying poor. A lot of people don't want to be even middle class. They're always searching. We live in a culture that's always looking up and envying the people ahead of us. It's an unhealthy thing, very unhealthy. Did you know the first sin, the first sin, yes. First of all, Lucifer got thrown out of heaven over envy. Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden because of envy. They wanted to be like God. The first murder was over envy, Cain and Abel. Abel's sacrifice was pleasing to God and Cain's wasn't. So he killed his brother. Envy is a very dangerous sin. So if you have envy, you have to start practicing gratitude. Force yourself to be grateful. Think of all the things you can be grateful for, and it crushes the envy. So, despite the problem of wealth, there are a rare few people who can be blessed with a lot of money and still maintain a simplicity of life and love God first. I've said this before, King Edward is one of them. King Edward gave everything. He was the King of England when it was an empire. But another such man that came to understand that is a guy named Charles or Chuck Feeney. Anybody ever heard of Chuck Feeney? Not very well known, but he should be. He was an Irish-born American. He was born in the Great Depression in Elizabeth, New Jersey in the year 1931. And he was born into very humble beginnings. They were kind of a poor family, very modest upbringing. As soon as he could enlist in the army, he did. That was going to be his step up in the world, go serve. And he wound up serving in the Korean War as a radio operator, like radar in the MASH television series. And after that, he applied through the GI Bill to attend Cornell University, where he sold sandwiches to pay for his education. So this guy was not afraid to do what had to be done to get to the next level, to get him up in the world, right? So then in 1958, he founds a company called Duty Free Shoppers. Yes, and you guessed it. It's all those duty-free shops in the airports. He founded that. He wanted to bring to travelers luxury goods that they could buy as they were going to the other places. He started in the US, expanded to Europe. It's now around the whole world. Those little airport shops that sell the duty-free goods. Well, by 1977, he was profiting $12 million a year of his own personal income, which was a lot of money in the 70s. And eventually, he built that fortune up to $8 billion. $8 billion. But he wasn't happy being a billionaire. So he founded the Atlantic Philanthropic Company, which was solely built to give away the money. He hired men and women to vet charities so he could give the money away. He built thousands of buildings around the world to house poor. He built hospitals. He built all sorts of things. And in October of 2023, just 2 years ago, he died. And you know how much money he had left when he died? He had nothing. He gave it all away. He wanted to give his money away while he was alive and see the good work he could do rather than pass it after his death. And by the way, that whole time he was a billionaire, he rented a modest home, rented. He took public transportation. He wore a cheap watch, and he lived a very simple life. Plain, simple food. He wasn't dining out at the best restaurants. So he proved to the world it can be done. You can be a billionaire and still have a heart for God and a heart for God's people. And so when we look at this gospel today, the very stark contrast between the rich man and Lazarus is daunting. One dined sumptuously every day on fine food and fancy silk clothing, and he spent his eternity in hell. The other guy, he longed to eat just scraps from somebody's table. He had no home. He's covered in sores, but he spent eternity in heaven after being carried there by the angels. So at the end of it all, who's the winner and who's the loser? Lazarus was the winner. The rich guy was the loser. Because if you don't get to heaven, I don't care how many billions of dollars you have, you're a loser. Eternally a loser. So we have to start choosing to imitate the lifestyle of Chuck Feeney, even if we're not billionaires. We have to detach from our material possessions, work hard at using those possessions for the good of God and his church. We've got to live simply, be more generous, and never neglect those in need. I'll tell you something about this church. We help a lot of people. Mostly nobody knows. You know who knows is the bookkeeper. Because people call us every week. I lost my job. I can't pay my rent. My car broke down. My husband left me. I've got 2 kids. I can't buy diapers. I mean, the list is endless. And you know who sends them to us? All the Baptist churches. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not handing out any money to help their people. They send them to the Catholic Church. And we help them. My only question is, do you go to church? And if they say no, I say, well, it's time to start, okay? Because God helps those who serve him. And so it's hopefully it's an entry point back into church. But we help everybody. And some days I feel like somebody's literally handing out our number. Or maybe it's on a bathroom stall. I don't know. But these people are coming in out of the woodwork. But we've been blessed. Our church is blessed with having a surplus of income. So we do help those who come to us, and I'm happy to do it. So we got to practice that gratitude, stop coveting. Coveting is an awful sin. And begin today to eliminate any envy. Drive out the despair. Trust in God's providence. Rejoice that like Lazarus and like Chuck, we're able to build up eternal riches that will remain for us forever in heaven. And that's the whole point.